Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, a podcast about leaving self-doubt in the dust, punching fear in the face, and taking bold action toward your biggest dreams. I'm Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is, I think, my new best friend, Mitali Deypurkaystha. Say hi, Mitali.
You got my name right. It's amazing. I'm happy. I'm very happy.
Names are important. Names are so important.
I know. They are very important. And yeah, nice to meet you, new BFF.
I know. And that's my little mini rant for everybody that's listening. Names are important. Spell them right. Pronounce them right. It's a sign of respect. Just do the damn thing. All right, rant over. We're already in a testy mood because right before we started recording the podcast, we discovered that Mitali's laptop is haunted.
It is haunted.
It's haunted.
It's haunted. There's some strange gremlin going on. I've never experienced it. Everything was still on, but I just got a black screen and I couldn't see you, but everything was still on. And I've just realized it's my hand that does it. If I put my hand on a specific part of my laptop.
So Mitali's haunted.
So or she's haunting the gremlin is in me. Yeah, I thought the gremlin was in the laptop. I think it might be in me.
The gremlin is in me. There's my subject line for this. Ooh, I love this episode already. We haven't even started talking. We were talking before the laptop got haunted a little bit about your journey. And I think it's so fascinating. And it's such an important story to tell because you were telling me that you lost your career at 25.
Yeah.
And had it kind of resurrected 10 years later by a surprise source. You were telling me a little bit about dealing with depression and seasonal affective disorder, which is also something I think a lot of creatives deal with. And you were telling me about struggling with drugs and addiction, which I think is also such an important topic. So we may cover all of this. We may cover only one piece of this, but I just want to dig into this and let you share your story.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh, where do I start? We'd be here all day if I went through all of that. So yeah, I was a washed up has-been at 25. So I've always wanted to write. I think it stems from at the age of 4, when I went to nursery in the US, you guys call it kindergarten. And I don't remember any of this because at 4 years old, you don't really have much of a memory. Yeah. But my mother tells me that the first day of nursery, I wasn't one of those, really teary, clingy kids. No, that wasn't me. I just didn't even look at it. I just disappeared. I was like, yay, kids, new human beings, little human beings that I can speak to, amazing. And I think it was my mother who was crying. I was like, yeah, I don't care. I'm off. Bye, Mom. So off I went off. I went off into a sea of children. And I was like, hello, world, I am here. What I didn't realize at the age of 4 was I'm the oldest of 4 kids. So my mother and father spoke Bengali to each other. That is our first language. So I had no concept at the age of 4 that I was in England and that there was this other language that people spoke. So I was speaking Bengali to all of these kids. So I must have been, first of all, this is, Gateshead where I'm based and, where I was brought up. It's still, even now at 2021, has the reputation of being one of the whitest parts of the UK, as in there's more white people per Black or Asian person than other places. Even now in 2021, when I was growing up in the 80s, there just wasn't anybody. So I was the only brown kid, first of all, in the class. So I was a bit of an oddity to all the kids anyway. And here I come chatting this very loud, peculiar language that they don't speak. I basically stuck out like a sore thumb. So I don't know how this happened, but somewhere in my brain, I must have put the fact that I can't communicate with these kids and the corner library that was in the nursery as my salvation to being able to communicate to those kids. I don't remember any of this. But my mother tells me within about half an hour, I'd run off to the corner library and I just buried myself in books and started reading books. And then for the next year, whenever she would drop me off at the nursery, I'd just run off straight into the library. And when she'd come back, a few hours later, I was still in the library and she had to take me, kicking and screaming out of the library and take me home. And a year later, she was told by my teacher that they had to buy new books for the library because I'd read everything in the library. So that's where the writing comes from. It comes from actually reading, and the reading actually comes from not being able to communicate with these kids.
Wow.
So that's where that comes from. So that gave me a lifelong love of reading and writing. And then I became a journalist. In my early 20s, I was a journalist and a freelance journalist working for different magazines in the northwest of England. And it got to 2001, 2002. I think you're a little bit younger than me, Angie, so I'm not sure if you remember that particular time, but that was when the internet really became overground. Okay.
Oh yeah, I remember.
So I know the internet was invented in 1994, but that was hardly anybody had it then. But in 2001, 2002, those years were when it became accessible to everybody. So there was this thing called new media. We call it the internet now, but it was called new media back then. New media, it's not new anymore. And editors up and down the UK, I don't know what happened in the US, whether it was something similar that happened or not, I'm not entirely sure. But in the UK, editors up and down the country just started laying off journalists because they had this belief that no one was going to read newspapers and magazines anymore. They were all going to go on the internet, which was stupid on an epic scale. Because all that was happening was the medium was changing. People still need news. They still want to know what's happening in the world. They want to have advice on fashion. They want to know where to eat, where to go on holiday. They want to know what celebrities are getting up to and who they're sleeping with now. And they still want all that information. It's just the medium was changing. But sadly, a lot of the editors were very, very short-sighted, and they just didn't see that really that you shouldn't be sacking all of your journalists. You still need them. You still need the content. You know,
it's just bullshit fear response, basically. Like we haven't calmed down from that initial like emotional surge of like, oh shit, we've noticed a trend that might impact us in a certain way. We're scared of what's going to happen next. So move to protect everything.
And it's really stupid, Angie. It's something that I feel bitter about from a personal point of view, because at the age of 25, to be told that's it, it's not just losing your job. I couldn't get a job elsewhere because all the other places were doing the same thing. So it's not like I was let go of one particular publication and then I can go to another publication. It was across the board, all over the country. So at the age of 25, I'm being told that's it. That's your career, your writing career over. At the age of 25, I'm just a baby at 25, you know, and it's like being told that's it. And I'm thinking, well, what do I do with my life now? And that's what started my depression. That really is when things, you know, because I mean, actually I skipped a part previous to that. When I was 19, I went to university, but because I come from such a closeted background, a lot of Asians will recognize that, especially growing up in the 80s, in that you weren't allowed. I always used to joke when, you know, my white friends will whinge about the fact they have a 9 p.m. curfew. And I'm like, damn it, you have a curfew. I don't even have a curfew. I'm literally not allowed out. So stop complaining to me that you have, oh my God, my parents need me to be back home by 9 p.m. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 13 years old or whatever it is. And I'm like, are you serious? Seriously, I'm going to slap you now if you don't shut up. I don't even have a curfew because I'm literally expected to come home after school and be indoors. So there is no curfew. There wasn't even a Bengali word for curfew because the thing doesn't exist. You come home and you stay home. That's how it is. So, you know, because I come from such a closeted background, when I went off to university, the typical thing happened. I went right off the rails, became absolute party animal. I ended up becoming addicted to amphetamines and ecstasy. And I ended up losing my place at university, losing my accommodation because it was linked to the university. And I ended up in homeless shelters for about a year.
Oh, goodness.
So I kind of came from that background, but the happy ending of that was I was assigned a really good team of coaches and consultants and mentors and therapists, and they were able to get me clean. I got back into university and I was able to do my degree. It was a media studies degree, and I got first in it. So I actually did really, really well. So to come back from that brink and make something of myself and then become a journalist, and have more work than I know what to do with. And then at the age of 25 to be told, well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's your career done. Down the toilet, it's gone. Go and think of something else to do. And I'm thinking I'm crap at everything else. Like literally, I'm the sort of person who can burn a saucepan boiling water. I'm terrible. I can't drive because I have dyspraxia. So I have no spatial awareness. I've completely crashed 3 cars to the extent that the insurance company just paid out. They said there's no point in repairing it. It's so badly crushed up that there's no point in repairing it. It'll cost more to repair than it will for us to just give you the money to go and buy another car. So I'm really useless at everything else. The only thing I can do well is I can write well and I can teach people how to write well. There's nothing else I can do in life. And at the age of 25, I'm being told, that's it. There's nothing more for you to do. So that kicked off my depression because I just thought, what do I do with my life now? I've got how many years of my life have I got left? Decades left, and I don't know what to do. So yeah, that, you know, the seasonal affective disorder, that's actually something I think was in me from a very early age, but it's just something that remained undiagnosed. I never even heard of SAD when I was a kid. I just remember just crying, having to get up in the mornings during the winter when it was dark and just feeling so depressed. And, you know, I think maybe that's why subconsciously I got into the sort of freelance side of journalism. At the time I wasn't aware of it, but I remember turning down opportunities to be staff writer. And I didn't realize at the time, if you'd asked me, I just like the idea of being able to write for different publications. But now I wonder if subconsciously I was aware of the fact that if you're a staff writer, you're going in at a certain time and you have hours that you need to keep. As a freelance writer, you worked from home and you submitted things. And I just liked that way of life, really. So that's what happened at 25. And then, I kind of spent over 10 years in the wilderness doing all kinds of jobs. I was a recruitment consultant for a while, a customer service representative for a PA firm. Oh God, I mean, I can talk for hours of all the shitty little jobs that I did, you know, just to keep a roof over my head.
You are far from alone on that score. I think almost everybody I've spoken to at this point has been like, look, here are like the 24 jobs that I've run through in the course of finding my path on entrepreneurship. So I'm almost like, you know, jokingly referring to it as like the path to entrepreneurship leads through a bunch of shitty jobs.
It is. That is the path. I'm yet to meet an entrepreneur that didn't do that. It's just how it is. So and then I lost my dad in 2007, which really affected me. I started to feel really guilty because my dad really wanted me to be a doctor. I know it's so stereotypical. I was meant to be a walking, talking stereotype, wasn't I? Indian girl, has an education, has to be a doctor, of course.
My parents wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer too. You're too smart to be a writer. Well, they didn't quite say those words, but that was the message that I interpreted.
I think I pretty much got that as well. So in 2007, after losing my dad, I kind of thought, well, at this point, I haven't had a career in writing for over 5-6 years. So I just thought, well, why not get into medicine? So I ended up doing another degree in psychology I ended up working in psychiatric wards for 5 years. And I worked in a prison for a while as well. So the aim was I wanted to become a clinical psychologist for the NHS. But it was always in my head, I always wanted to do something with writing. I just couldn't see how. You know, you're just in a fog and you just can't see how you're going to get there. And then what ended up happening was it was just out of the blue, a friend of mine called me. He's a search engine optimization specialist. And he was, you know, talking about this new Google update, and I actually was quite rude to him. I cut him off and said, why are you talking to me about some shitty algorithm update? I don't give I don't give a monkey. Why? I'm a writer. Why would I care about? The only thing I care about when it comes to Google is, does it help me with my search? Does it give me what I need? As long as it does that, I really don't care about the updates and all the rest of it. It makes sense for him because he's a search engine optimization specialist. Yeah. So he needs to give, but why is he talking to me about this, you know? And then he was like, oh my God, Mitali, can you just shut up and let me finish? I'm like, oh, okay then. So I'm just like, just get to the point.
No, I think so many of us have actually, like, I have a lot of copywriter friends because of my background as a copywriter, and that's a sales writer for everybody listening that doesn't really understand it. At its essence, it's a sales writer. I actually had books about being a copywriter in my collection as early as 2005, 2006. And it would take 4 or 5 years before I got enough context and experience to where I went back to those books and went, oh, I've had these all along. And I read them and they didn't make sense.
Any sense at the time. Yeah.
And then, but it was like having to read a different book or have somebody like your friend make the connection for me, point out the obvious and go, oh yeah, somebody has to write those emails that you're getting. Somebody has to write that commercial that goes on the air.
And in your head, it's like, what? And then when you're told about it, you're thinking, what was I thinking? Where did this? I mean, is there some sort of email god that just writes content and it just magically turns up in an autoresponder? Of course not. People have to write that. But until somebody points it out, you don't realize. So he said, no, just shut up, Mitali. Let me finish. I was like, okay, that's me told off. And he said, right, because of this Panda update, it means that website owners can no longer just go and get cheap writers from Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe who can, just about have decent English. But really before that, it was all about getting the right keywords into your content. And then you can rank on Google. And with this new update, I think it was 2013, I believe, the Panda update. I don't know why they do updates with animals. I don't really think of Google as like an animal lover, really. But anyway, they use animals for their updates. They had a penguin update after that. I don't know what that was. But the Panda update meant that now the algorithm was seeing how long somebody is reading the page, if they're interacting with it, do they leave comments, do they click on links and go and read more content elsewhere on the same website. It just became more sophisticated. It was no longer just about getting the right keywords in and that's it. So that he was explaining to me that means they're now looking for writers who not just people who can just about string sentences together, but somebody who can actually write engaging content that people want to read and they want to interact with. So he's like, this is your chance to get back into writing. So then obviously I had to eat humble pie and send him a bunch of flowers and say, really sorry for being rude and putting you on. So he was actually trying to save me here. And here's me being rude and saying, why are you talking to me about bloody algorithm update? Why would I care about that? So I had to eat humble pie. They went, thank you so much. You're a really, really good friend. And from that's where everything started. So I started writing content for different websites. Oh my God, Angie, I've got some amazing stories to tell you about like some of the things that I learned. And you'll know this as well as a writer. You get commissioned to write for things you have no idea about. So then you have to go and do a load of research. And then you think, oh my God, I had no idea about this. So one of my best clients was a gun store owner in Arkansas. I've never handled a gun in my life. You have to remember, I'm a Brit. We Brits are weird about guns because it's not in our culture. We don't see our cops with guns. We just don't see it. So because of that, it freaks us out. Unless you're one of these country people with a ton of money, you're an earl or, you're a duke of some sort and you go shooting peasants and that kind of thing. We're talking about we're talking about 0.1% of the population in the UK. The rest of us lowly commoners, we've never handled a gun. We don't see guns. Guns are things that we see on TV. It's not normal for us. So I've never handled a gun in my life. I have no wish to handle a gun in my life. I don't even want to touch one. And yeah, I was writing about how to shoot people in the dark. And which gun is nice for women? So it's nice and dainty, but powerful at the same time. Deadly at this.
Yeah, I was freaking pink guns now too.
Oh
it's
yes,
ridiculous.
Pink guns and pink holsters to go with it and everything. So I was writing that. I remember one specific summer. This is in 2014. I was commissioned by this one guy in London, and he was a Love Honey affiliate. Now, do you guys have Love Honey in the US?
No, not that I know. It might be something I'm not familiar with, but I haven't heard of it.
Okay, so Love Honey, maybe just a UK thing or maybe a Europe thing. So Love Honey is a brand. And what they do is they sell adult sex toys. And this guy in London is an affiliate for them. So you can actually be an affiliate and have your own web store where you sell Love Honey products. So this guy commissioned me, and it was like 100 articles he wanted me to write. And he wanted them really fast. He wanted them within a month.
Holy
So I had
shit.
to pretty much schedule the whole of August, and all I was writing was, and I basically spent the whole of that August writing 100 articles on cock rings.
I've got so many great subject lines just from like all the stories.
Feel free to steal all of this and use it as subject lines if you want. But yes, I mean, I've never, ever asked any of my exes to use a cock ring. Mm-hmm. But if there's ever you want to know anything about cock rings, Angie, come to me. I will be able to go through the pros and cons of different materials, different shapes, anything you want to know.
You heard it here first. Mitali is your cock ring expert. Woo! Love you, Mom and Dad. God. They will not be surprised by anything that comes out.
My mother doesn't listen to podcasts, thank God. So
my parents have listened to mine, but I also revealed on an earlier podcast, I think it was episode 7, where I did like a month as a phone sex operator. So
and they didn't know?
My mom actually knew at the time, but I don't think my dad did. So we were listening to the episode together, and that part came up, and he kind of did that. I was like, oh shit, that's right. I did that.
God.
Okay, cool. And then I decided it wasn't for me, so I didn't stick with that career, Dad. But yeah, I did that for a while.
Oh
sorry, not sorry.
I know. Oh my God. But
like, check this out. I can turn on the voice. I can make it sound like a completely different person.
You're kind of turning me on, Angie. That's a bit worrying.
I said new best friend. Here we are.
Stop it. Mm-hmm. I wasn't thinking of this kind of best friend, but you know.
Too much fun.
Yes. Gosh, so where was I? So I had so much fun because you end up being forced into learning things. Mm-hmm. Why would I research cock rings? Why would I research guns when I've never handled a gun in my life? I remember spending a couple of weeks writing an 80-page book on mattresses. Yeah. I know. So if you need to know anything about mattresses, whether you go memory foam, whether you go spring, different kinds of spring, do get in contact with me, Angie. I'll be able to tell you everything there is to know about mattresses. So I had fun with that. Then I moved into copywriting. I think I speak for most copywriters, and that the reason why we do it is you start seeing other people and they earn so much more than you do as a content writer. Mm-hmm. So I started to get jealous. It was like, hang on a minute. So I write 100 articles and I might get paid about, I don't know, $1,000 to $2,000 for that. Mm-hmm. But if I can write a sales page and charge that or more. So that's how I moved into copywriting. I taught myself. I'm a Dan Kennedy certified copywriter. Ooh. And I've just, and then learning from various other copywriters, people that I'm sure you've heard of, that just I started to learn from them, started doing their courses and started writing sales pages and landing pages just so I can make more money than I was doing as a content writer. Mm-hmm. And then the books thing came up because one of my copywriting clients said, hey, I really want to write a book. No, let me change that. I don't want to write a book, but I do want to be an author. How do you fancy writing my book for me? And I just thought, I've never written a book in my life. How am I going to do this? But okay, if you will have patience with me and you're not expecting it in the next 2 months. And he said, no, you can take a year, but I really like what you're doing for me with the copywriting. I'm going to trust you to write my book. It's something that, how you said before, you said when it was only when you go back to some of the books that you bought in 2005 that didn't you then, but now it's like, oh my God, it makes sense. Is that happened to me with this guy? So I did a course with Dan Kennedy about 3 years ago, and in it he talks about how people make the mistake of businesses make the mistake of separating their copywriting and content writing. So what they do is they will hire somebody to write the sales pages and the landing pages and all the things that involve conversions. Yeah. And they will pay that person more money. And then they'll get a lowly content writer who you charge is like a sixth of what the copywriter charges. And they will get that person to do all the deliverables. Including books and ebooks and that kind of thing. And Dan
there are talented writers out there, content writers that can certainly pull that off. But I also think that that's such a short-sighted vision on behalf of the business owner to like parse it down into like this person, their work earns more and this person, their work earns less. Like, okay, but yeah, you're kind of unincentivizing the lower paid person to not produce as great too, almost.
It is, but there's actually something more profound than that. It's not even, and something that then clicked when I went on this Dan Kennedy course, and he was talking about that really famous book, Think and Grow Rich. Everyone knows the book, by Napoleon, and he was talking about why is that book still being read by thousands upon thousands of people every single month, when there's been several books on the topic very similar to it, they've come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something that just blew my mind. He said, because the best business books out there are not just seen as deliverables. They're written in a way that they're still selling. But now they're no longer selling something. They're not selling a service or a product or a software. They're selling the concept back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're
that's
selling
why
that knowledge. Yeah,
exactly. And that's why he was saying the really savvy business owners hire a copywriter, not just for their sales pages and the landing pages. They use their copywriter for all of their content.
Mm-hmm.
Even the deliverables, such as an ebook or a report, they still use a copywriter, because a copywriter is not just going to write content. They're going to sell the concept back to that person, which then makes them want to interact with that business even more and go down further on their customer journey with that business.
Absolutely.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, that guy that hired me back in 2015, he must have done the same course, because that's what he did. He could have got, you could have just gone onto someone like Upwork.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't called Upwork then. What was it called then? Odesk. It was called Odesk then.
Oh, yeah.
The place that you go to.
Elance and Guru, and I was on all those sites once upon a time.
All those places. He could have just gone on there, found himself some content writer, and, and he wouldn't have had to pay as much money as he paid me as a copywriter, but he was onto something. He didn't want a content writer. He wanted a copywriter to write his book.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
that's
you said some great things there that I wanted to circle back to for everybody that's listening. There were two main concepts that I wanted to highlight that I think were freaking brilliant in your experience. One was that you had no idea what you were doing, but you just jumped in and said yes and figured it out. And through the course of saying yes and figuring it out, you wound up working with people that you could have that honest relationship with, where he goes, I like you. I like your writing style. Please write a book for me. And you're like, be honest, bro. Never written a book. Be patient I'm willing to try, but be patient with me. And he goes, oh, hell yeah. Have 12 times more time than you initially thought I would give you, because I like working with you. So this is definitely a relationship-based business versus they're looking for the premier experts. They're looking for somebody that's going to either save them the money or charge them an ass load of money because they're an expert. And that brings me to the second point rather neatly, which is not all about the money. Smart business owners recognize that if they find someone that they can depend on who reliably, routinely creates good results for them, whatever that is. If you're a photographer, you're creating amazing portraits. If you are a painter, you're creating amazing landscapes. If you're a baker, you are creating the cakes that everybody wants at their weddings. Whatever it is, people are willing to pay for that, even if it's at a premium. And there are people that are willing to buy at all prices along the spectrum. So stop it with this, like, writers only make so much shit. Mitali and I are perfect examples of the fact that you do not have to be a starving writer, folks.
Oh God, you don't.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely
don't do it. Not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, I only got into copywriting because I just got jealous when I met a few copywriters and they were earning a lot more. So I was like, well, damn it, I want to earn more. So I just did it, Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. I think I was listening to one of your previous podcasts, and you had, was it Robert Lucas, is it, that you had? And he was saying how, he taught himself to write sales pages. He just wrote 29 sales pages in 29 days. Mm-hmm. And I love that. When I heard that, I was like, hallelujah, that's what you do as a writer. Just get out there. Don't say no. Just say yes. Be honest. Don't blow, smoke up someone's ass. Don't do that. I didn't tell this guy, oh yes, I've written loads of books before, even though I hadn't written any books. I was honest to say, I've never written a book before. Mm-hmm. I've written sales pages and landing pages and emails and all that stuff. But if you're willing to give me a chance, hell yes, let's do it.
But the key to that, I think too, and I want to point this out, I want to highlight it again, because it's just so important. You didn't sell from your heels. You didn't come at it from a place of insecurity. You came at it with this, like this inner authority, this inner confidence of, yes, I've written all of these other things. I've never written a book, honesty, but given all of this experience that I've got, I'm pretty sure I can figure it out.
Absolutely.
Do you want to work with me on this? Like, do you want to give me that patience and I'll do my absolute damnedest? And they get it. You don't have to come at that from like, well, I've never written a book. I think I could do it. Like, the difference between your approach and that like timid approach is night and day.
Absolutely. And it's actually this, going through this experience now helps me with my students, because I teach people now how to write books, and they do the same thing. They have this imposter syndrome that they go through, and it's sort of like, oh my God, I don't think I can write a book. I'm not sure how to do it. I'm just like, you just got to bite the bullet and just be aware. I mean, this is the wonderful thing. If we go back sort of 20 years ago, you know, as a business owner 20 years ago, you didn't really do something called content marketing. It just wasn't a thing then. Because if you think about it, all you could do is really put an advert somewhere, maybe in a nursepaper or the radio or the TV, and you know, please come and buy my shiny shit kind of thing. And then, you know, and then people would have to further the customer journey, they would have to contact you. And then you would either have a sales guy who would close them, or you'd send them out a catalog or a brochure. That's how people did business back then. But now people lurk. They stalk you in the shadows. I've had people who've turned into a student of mine who tell me, oh yeah, I've been following your live since October. Freaking October?
That happened to me last month. So I'm in Nashville right now. I'm a digital nomad full-time, and I've been traveling from city to city. Last month I was in Nashville, and I met up with we must have hung out like 10 times after the initial meetup, because it was like, I imagine if you were here in Nashville with me, the same would be true. We would just be hanging out every other day. And this person wound up telling me, this made me laugh. She goes, there's no way I'm not letting you be my friends now. You have to be my friend. I love you. I've been stalking you since like October. And she said it in a very charming way.
And you're going, who are you?
Oh no, she's brilliant. But yeah, before I was like, she was in my periphery and someone that I knew existed. I recognized her name, but I just didn't know her that well. But she was paying attention to me because I was putting myself out there and sharing my opinion, not in a mean way, but just sharing what I thought without fear of like people judging me for it. Because the people that are judging me for it just don't get it.
And then they're not your ideal client or somebody that you want to hang out with anyway. But yeah, so, I mean, this guy had been watching my live since October last year, and he hadn't even hit a like, which just floored me. I was like, okay, a comment takes energy. You have to kind of think about it and make a nice comment. But to just push that like button, how much energy does that? Just hit me with a like, mate. Come on, man. Just let me know you exist and you appreciate my content. He'd been following me that whole time. And I do about 3 to 4 lives a week.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he'd been watching all of them, consuming all that content. And then finally, a couple of weeks ago, he put his hand up and said, hey, love what you do. I really want to write my book. Can you please help me? Didn't even know this guy existed. Literally didn't know this guy existed.
See, and that's applicable to business too, because guys, when you put yourself out there, at first, it's going to feel like nobody is paying attention. It's going to feel like nobody's paying attention to what you have to say for a long ass time. But just like this guy who has been following Mitali since October and just now said something, 6 months later?
More than 6 months, isn't it?
There are people out there that are paying attention to what you do. And just by showing up consistently, predictably, saying what you have to say, being you are attracting people to you. And when they're ready, just like this guy, they'll raise their hand.
Exactly. But this is what I mean about, if you're a business owner in 2021, you kind of instinctively know this, because even if you've never heard anybody say it the way I've just said it and kind of laid it out on the line, you do know this subconsciously, because that's why you do content marketing. So even if you're not doing lives, you're doing blog posts, you're doing some sort of outreach on social media where you're talking about the value that you give. You are instinctively doing that. All a business book is just doing that on a grander scale. So when I tell my students that, and I can physically see the penny drop. I can literally see it. And they're like, oh my God, that's all it is really, isn't it? So it's really just like what I've been doing for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, however long they've been in business. I'm like, yes, but you're just doing it on a grander scale, a bigger scale. We're just amalgamating all of this information and we're making it into some sort of coherent sense. That's all we're doing. And then they go, oh my God, it's actually not. It's like, yeah, I'm not asking you to go and write a novel. Yeah. I'm not asking you to go and write the next 50 Shades of Grey. Please don't do that. They were terrible, those books as well. Please, oh my God. I managed to get, I think, halfway into the first book. And I'm like, I can't do this. I actually, the prose is horrible. And secondly, I'm not even turned on. And I think that was the whole point of these books. That's the whole point. So I was like, right, well, this is failing in both ways. So I can't be bothered. So I gave up. So please don't do that. But the point is, if I was asking you to write something completely different out of your business, you're writing a novel, book of poetry, a children's book, then I'm like, I would be overwhelmed. And I'm a writer. I've ghostwritten 7 business books and I've got my own book out now. So that's 8 books I've written in about 6 years. And even I'd be intimidated if somebody said, hey, go and write a novel. Or go and write some poetry. I don't know where to start. Yeah. But when you're writing a nonfiction business book and it's a book for your business to leverage so you can be seen as an authority in your field, in your sector, in your industry, all you're doing is doing what you're doing right now on social media and on your website, but you're just doing it on a grander scale. So there's no need to get overwhelmed by it.
Well, and I like that you use the word leverage. Because especially for people that are new to freelancing, new to entrepreneurship, and you're still kind of attached, subconsciously or even consciously to this idea of time for dollars, hours for dollars, or pounds, wherever you may be, trading time for money. Yeah. When you're a business owner, the shift that you need to make is leverage. How can I produce something once that I can use again and again and again?
Absolutely.
And compound my returns that way, which separates you from having to trade time for dollars, because you can only go so far when you're trading time for dollars. You can only take on so many clients. You can only do so many services. But if you create a book, you can sell that same book hundreds of thousands, millions of times, have it translated into different languages, continue selling it millions of times.
It's an asset. And that's the thing. Create assets.
Yes.
I always in my head, I make the distinction between self-employed and entrepreneur. So I always say that if you are basically getting paid for work done, whether you're doing it hour basis or by project basis, in my head, you're self-employed. You've given yourself a job. You're not an entrepreneur. Yeah. You've given yourself a job. What an entrepreneur does is they create assets that they can get paid for again and again and again. I always make that distinction.
I love that way of looking at it too. And because you're creating an asset, and that automatically changes the language here too. I'm making an investment in creating an asset. And where I think a lot of people get in trouble, especially when it comes to growth, like they've hit that uncomfortable stage where something needs to change. And then they start looking at everything as costs. Like, it's going to cost me this to create a book. It's going to cost me that to create a membership. And no, I'm going to create a book so that this can pay off further down the road. And I have to work less. Ultimately, I'm going to create that membership because it's going to pay more later down the road. And I'm going to have to work less. This is an investment in future returns.
That's it. Yeah, it is a mindset thing. And it blew my mind when I learned that in copywriting. So when I moved from content writing, where I was self-employed, I wrote articles. They paid me 50% to start writing, and then they paid me the final 50%. So I was self-employed. I wasn't an entrepreneur. And then when I got into copywriting, again, I was self-employed until I started to listen to all these people who were talking about building assets. And that's when, as a copywriter, and this is actually a tip for any writers out there, what you could do is with your best clients, start, instead of just charging a fee, see if they'd be open to you charging a lower fee, much lower fee, and you then get paid a percentage of sales. Because I ended up doing that with a few sales pages, and I'm still getting paid now because those sales pages are still earning money for my clients. They're still live, which means I'm still getting money in my PayPal account for sales pages that I wrote back in 2016. Yeah. So
you
I
created an asset for them.
In fact, I didn't even create an asset there. I leached off somebody else's asset. Is what I did, which is even better. So I was like, I'll help you create this asset. I'm going to leech on it forever. But that's, and that's when I started to think, oh my God, I'm self-employed. I'm not an entrepreneur. Here's me trying to big myself up. Hey, I'm an entrepreneur. And the realization, I'm not an entrepreneur. All I am is self-employed. I've just given myself a job. You're not actually any much further on than just being employed by somebody else.
Oh, yeah. I've made that joke before with some of my coaching students. Like, your boss is an asshole. You know that?
Yeah.
Your boss is you. You're being a jerk to yourself.
And you work harder for yourself than any other boss. So I would say if you're self-employed, chances are you're actually in a worse state than if you're employed.
Because at least when you were employed, somebody else was taking care of taxes and accounting and bringing you business and all that other shit. And now you have to do that all. Yep.
You can clock off. You can be like, oh my God, it's 5 o'clock Friday. I'm off down to the bar. I want to have a drink the week.
Happy hour.
You can't do that.
Yep.
When you're working for yourself and you have a deadline, it's like, it doesn't matter that it's Friday, 5 p.m. and you want to sign off for the weekend. You need to work. It's as simple as that. So chances are, I actually remember speaking to a friend of mine who actually agreed with me. He was a graphic designer and he set up his own agency. And after 5 years, he went back to working for somebody else because he realized that once he set up on his own, not only was he working harder than he ever did for a boss, but also he now needed to learn this whole other skill set that he didn't want to learn, which is lead generation and sales. He had to find his own clients. Whereas when he worked for somebody else was giving him the clients. They had a sales team and then he was just doing what he loved best, which is graphic design. And he found that actually being his own boss was the worst thing because all he'd done is given himself a job. Plus, he now needs to do sales and marketing, which he hated. He's a really shy, very quietly spoken man. And the idea of selling is just like, he did not like it. So he ended up going back to a very well-paid job because that was better for him than being self-employed. But imagine if he had learned to create assets, then he probably wouldn't. He'd probably still be an entrepreneur now.
If he'd learned to create assets and if he had brought on the right support, because as you grow, you're going to get to a point where you can't do this by yourself anymore. And you need some sort of help, whether you're outsourcing to an accountant to handle your books. I hate spreadsheets. I hate tracking my receipts. You cannot pay me to do that. I will gladly hand that off to someone else. There's so much stuff that I outsource now that I probably in the early stages of my freelance journey would have thought, oh my God, that's costing me so much money. And now my mindset is, oh my God, that's saving me so much time.
Exactly. I always say that this is not mine. So I'm afraid I can't say it's my saying. I've read this from somewhere. I just don't know where. But, people say, can I afford to outsource? And the question should be, can you afford not to outsource? And that should always be how you think, because you should always be outsourcing the stuff that can be done by somebody else, because you can spend that time doing all those money-making activities. So you make the money to pay that person and then some. So I always think, can I afford not to outsource as opposed to can I afford to outsource? Yeah,
because like if you're the business owner and you can find something to sell for $500 an hour, and like that's your special thing, the thing that you do really well. I know that some of you new to freelancing may be like $500 an hour. Trust, it's totally doable. There are people that charge $2,000 plus $10,000 an hour. Like people all along the pricing spectrum. You can set your price wherever you want, and then your job is just to build the value and make it worth the price. I don't know where I was going with that thought, but it was a good one.
Well, that's why I love these conversations. We can just meander around. All we need is a bottle of whiskey or something, don't we, Andrew? We just set the world to rights. And
absolutely. We're going to school them. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. We are absolutely doing a part 2. I might even have you as a recurring guest. We'll just rant about shit and it'll be a great episode.
Love that. I'd absolutely love that.
Tell everybody a little bit about where to find more information about you, especially if they want to write a book.
The best place to go is if you go to the Freedom Mastermind. So my book, actually, I didn't even talk about my book. I should do that, really, shouldn't I? So I've written 7 business books as a ghostwriter. Can't tell you what they are because I've got non-disclosure agreements that they will sue my arse off me if I said that I wrote those books. But then I wrote my 8th book, and it was published earlier this year. It was my first as an author.
Woohoo!
And I feel like I'm bragging here, but I've been told I need to say it more. It became a bestseller in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia.
Yes.
So I was like, there you go.
We're all celebrating with you. Celebrating.
Yay. But what the book is, and I would say anybody who's interested in writing a book for their business, but they're just kind of unsure about what a book would do. I realized when I was speaking to a lot of people last year, doing some research for this book, is that a lot of people want to write a book, but the truth is they know it's work. It needs focus. And they just don't know how they would leverage the book properly. That's the key word. It's not about making a ton of sales. I mean, we all wish that we can be E.L. James, write shitty books like 50 Shades of Grey and still become a multimillionaire. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen to many people at all. So you're not trying to become a millionaire from the sales of the book. So people understand that. Entrepreneurs get that it's a tool for leverage, but they're just not sure, well, what would I do once I've got the book? What the hell do I do with it to build my business? So what my book, The Freedom Masterplan, is all about is I've interviewed 7 of my previous clients who've now got 6 and 7 figure businesses. So I told them, tell me what you did with the book. Like, I want to know every single thing you did with the book to get to where you are now. And I recorded everything and put it into the Freedom Masterplan.
Ooh,
so
nice.
If anyone wants to write a book, go and get the Freedom Masterplan. It means that you can actually see the end game. You can actually cherry pick the strategies that you like and will fit your business. And it means you know what you're going to do with your book before you've even written a single word.
Oh, so, that's amazing. I'm going to go get a copy of it as soon as we finish recording this.
Just go to my website. It's basically the name of the book. So it's thefreedommasterplan.com, thefreedommasterplan.com. And you can go there. You can even download the first chapter for free as a sample chapter. So go and get that. And if you like it, go and get the book. There's links to Amazon. It will go directly to whichever Amazon, serves your country. And you can go and get a copy. That's the best place. Otherwise, just come and find me on social media with a ridiculous surname like mine. It's 13 letters long. It's like I wanted to try and get as much of the English alphabet in there as possible. There is literally me and my siblings on the whole of Facebook with that surname. So if you put in Mitali Deypurkaystha, you will find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever the hell you want.
Fantastic. Thank you again so much for being on the show. This is my new favorite episode.
Oh, thank you.
We will talk soon. So that is it. Another awesome episode of Permission to Kick Ass on the books. If you want to know more about the show, if you want to know more about me, Angie Coley, and the mission I'm on to help entrepreneurs punch fear in the face and do big, bold things, then head on over to permissiontokickass.com. That is all one word together, permissiontokickass.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list so that you know whenever there's a hot, fresh, and ready podcast episode out for you. And also on Mondays, I like to send out a little newsletter called Kick Monday's Ass. I'm sure you're totally surprised by that. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm Angie Coley. Make sure that you share this with a friend that needs to hear this message today. Like it, share it, comment wherever you're listening to this today, and let's go kick some ass.